Welcome to a sampling of Taleypo Tales. Marilyn Kinsella of Fairview Heights, Illinois, has been telling stories as Taleypo the Storyteller since 1981. Her collection over 125 stories includes mostly folk tales from around the world and personal experience stories about growing up in southern Illinois. But it also includes a smattering of literary tales, historical narratives, and original stories. Her style is animated with lots of participation for younger audiences and subdued with lots of clever word imaging for older audiences. This sampler will give you a taste for the range of styles she incorporates into her stories to meet her audience's needs. The first and second clip were filmed at the National Storytelling Network Conference in San Diego, California, in the summer of 2000. There is an African folktale called Baby Leopard that was collected by fellow storyteller Linda Goss. The second clip is a personal story Marilyn wrote called Makin' Music. The third clip was filmed live by Stardust Studios in the summer of 2002. It includes scenes from a program that Marilyn and her husband Larry, an experimental archaeologist, performed together called Stories and Stones. Websites listed at the end of the sampler detail information on the Kinsellas and the many programs and workshops they offer. Please email for brochures or informational packets. And now, for the stories.
Oh, fire. Just what I want to play with. And even though the other animals were running the opposite direction, Baby Leopard kept on walking up the hill, and there on the other side was fire. But it wasn't like the little fire underneath Mother's cooking pot. No, this was a huge, enormous fire with red, yellow, and orange flames for hair. And Baby Leopard thought fire was magnificent. But Baby Leopard thought, oh, I should be doing something. But he couldn't remember what it was. And Fire looked out and said, Baby Leopard, come close, so I may take you in my arms. Oh, Baby Leopard knew that the arms of Fire were nothing like the arms of his mother. When Fire looked out and said, Baby Leopard, let me lick your coat clean. And now Baby Leopard began to tremble and to shake. And when he looked up and he saw Fire, he knew he should be doing something but couldn't remember. When Fire took those long fingers, reached out for Baby Leopard, and touched the back of his coat. Oh, and Baby Leopard could feel his coat burning. And he turned and he ran and he ran and he ran all the way back to Mother. And then I discovered something about myself. I discovered my storytelling is my music. You know, I look upon every story as a piece of music. And sometimes I tell my stories forte, and sometimes pianissimo. Sometimes my stories just kind of trickle along, and other times they build up to a wild crescendo. And every word I say is like a note of music with its own intrinsic sound and value. And there's something else. I don't mind practicing one bit. Now, the whole idea of my storytelling in music wasn't quite my own. You see, one day I was asked to tell stories, and it was a hot summer's day. And I went to the park, and there were hundreds of campers waiting for me. And I started to tell my story. And I remembered the words of Jackie Torrance, my first teacher. And she told me to use my talents. So I started to tell a story called Brer Possum and Brer Snake. And for the very first time, Brer Snake emerged from that hole in the ground, and there was that snake who has slithered its way into many of my other stories. Then I started to tell another story, Where the Wild Things Are. And you know, in that story, they roar their terrible roars. unroll their terrible eyes, and show their terrible claws. There was that wiggly eye thing. My first grade teacher would come up and ask me a question. I wasn't the brightest light bulb in the Midwest, and I didn't know the answers. So I just look at her and twirl my eyes around a little bit. I think she thought I was possessed and left me alone for the rest of the day. Well, now I was on a roll, and I told a story by Mercer Mayer called Liza Lou in the Yellow Belly Swamp. And in that story, Liza Lou has to trick a witch into thinking this bundle of laundry is really a baby. So she makes it sound just like a baby cry. It was 7th grade Girl Scouts, and we had to put on a skit, and I was sitting there making all kinds of strange noises when suddenly out came the baby cry, and in came my mother, wondering where the baby came from. And I found a place to use it in my story. When I was ready to leave that day, a little camper came running up to me, and she said, "Now you tell me how you did that." And I said, "How do I do what?" And she said, "You know. How do you make music with your words?" How do I make music with my words? It was one of those wonderful golden moments when I wish I had a tape recorder or a picture, but all I'm ever going to have is that memory. And I learned something from that 10-year-old camper. I learned that I don't have to make music on a violin like my mother did, or a baby grand piano like my grandmother. But you know, I can make music. I can make music with my words.